The moneylender said pay by Friday or lose the horse. The farrier said she would keep both. The horse was a bay mare named Clara, who had been the best horse on the Burwell farm for 11 years. Steady, strong, willing to pull the plow and the wagon and the harrow without complaint, willing to stand in the traces on cold mornings while the frost was on the ground and the breath came out white and the work was hard. Willing, because Clara was the kind of horse that understands work the way some people understand work, not as punishment, but as purpose, and purpose was Clara's nature, and her nature was the thing Maisie Burwell could not afford to lose. Maisie was 29 years old and she had been farming 40 acres outside of Stillwell, Oklahoma territory, since her husband Judd had been thrown from a horse and broken his back 2 years earlier. Judd was alive, but the aliveness was limited. He could sit in a chair, and he could feed himself, and he could speak, but he could not walk, and he could not work, and the not walking and the not working had changed the arithmetic of the Burwell farm from possible to desperate, because 40 acres requires labor, and labor requires a body that functions, and Judd's body did not function, and Maisie's body functioned, but it was one body doing the work of two, and one body doing the work of two wears out faster than two bodies doing the work of two, and the wearing out was visible. Judd sat on the porch. He sat on the porch every day, because the porch was the farthest distance his chair could travel from the bedroom, and the farthest distance was the measure of his world, and his world was the porch, and the view from the porch, and the sounds from the porch, the chickens, the wind, the creak of the windmill, the particular silence of a farm being worked by one person when it requires two. He watched Maisie work. He watched her hitch Clara to the plow and drive the plow through the fields, and the watching was the torment. Because watching someone you love do work you should be doing is a form of helplessness that is worse than pain, because pain is personal and helplessness is relational, and relational suffering is the kind that corrodes the soul. Maisie did not let him see the corroding. She did not let him see the exhaustion, or the fear, or the slow erosion of the savings that had never been large enough to cushion a fall this complete. She showed him the garden and the crops and the progress, and the showing was the performance, and the performance was the love, because love in desperate circumstances is a performance, not because the love is false, but because the showing of love requires the hiding of despair, and hiding despair from a man in a wheelchair is the hardest acting a woman can do. The moneylender's name was Tipton. He did not have a first name that anyone used. He was Tipton, the way a disease is its own name, identified by its symptoms rather than its origin. Tipton lent money to farmers in the Stillwell area at rates that were not criminal, because the territory had no usury laws, and the absence of usury laws was the environment in which Tipton thrived, the way mold thrives in the absence of sunlight, not because the environment is good, but because the environment permits. Maisie had borrowed $12 from Tipton in January to buy winter feed for the stock. $12 at Tipton's rate became $14 by March and $16 by May, and the growing was the design, because the design of Tipton's loans was not repayment. The design was default, and default meant seizure, and seizure meant Tipton took the collateral, and the collateral was Clara, and Clara was worth $60 on the open market, and $60 for a $12 loan is the mathematics of predation. Tipton came to the farm on a Wednesday in June. He came in a buggy with a man named Stilts, who was large and who served as Tipton's collector, which is a polite word for the person who takes things from people who cannot prevent the taking. Tipton stood in the yard and he told Maisie she had until Friday to pay $16, or he would take Clara, and the telling was delivered with the particular courtesy of a man who enjoys the power of the deadline, because the deadline is the weapon, and the weapon does not need to be wielded. The weapon needs only to be displayed, and the displaying was the cruelty, and the cruelty was Tipton's pleasure. "I will have the money by Friday," Maisie said. She did not have the money. She did not have the money because the money did not exist. The farm had produced enough to feed the family and the stock, but not enough to produce $16 in surplus. And surplus is the thing that separates survival from security. And Maisie Burwell had been surviving for 2 years, but she had not been secure. and the difference was $16. And $16 was the distance between keeping Clara and losing her. That night, Maisie sat at the kitchen table after Judd was asleep. She sat with the farm ledger open, and the numbers written in columns that told the story the way all farm ledgers tell stories. In the language of deficit, the language of not enough, the language that says the tomatoes brought in $4, and the eggs brought in $2, and the mending she did for the neighbors brought in $1.50, and the total was $7.50, and $7.50 is not $16, and the difference is $8.50, and $8.50 in 2 days is impossible, and impossible at a kitchen table at midnight is the loneliest word in any language. She looked at Clara through the kitchen window. Clara was in the pasture, standing in the moonlight the way horses stand, head low, one hip cocked, the posture of rest, the rest of an animal that has worked hard and has earned the standing, and the standing was the thing Tipton wanted to take, and the taking was the crime, and the crime was legal, and legal crimes are the worst kind, because legal crimes have no remedy except money, and money was the thing Maisie did not have. She did not cry. She had stopped crying 18 months ago, after the 6th month of doing everything alone, because crying requires energy, and energy was a resource she could not waste on tears, when the resource was needed for plowing and feeding, and mending, and the 100 other tasks that kept the farm alive, and alive was the minimum, and the minimum was all she could manage. The farrier's name was Cobb Sutherland. He was 42 years old, and he had been shoeing horses in the Stillwell area for 9 years, and he was good at his work in the way that farriers are good, with the hands and the back, and the patient understanding that a horse's hoof is the foundation of the horse, and the foundation must be right, because everything else depends on it. And dependence on a foundation is the most important dependence there is. And Cobb understood foundations, because Cobb was a man who had been building his life from the foundation up for 9 years, one horseshoe at a time. He had shoed Clara twice a year for as long as Maisie had owned her. He knew Clara the way farriers know horses, from the bottom up, from the hooves that tell the story of the horse's life, the way rings tell the story of a tree, each shoe mark a year, each wear pattern a chapter, and Clara's chapters were 11 years of honest work on a 40-acre farm. And the honesty of the work was visible in the hooves, and the visibility was the respect, and the respect was the reason Cobb Sutherland could not watch Tipton take Clara. He heard about the deadline from the mercantile owner, who had heard it from Tipton himself, because Tipton announced his deadlines the way a man announces his victories, publicly, with the confidence of a person who knows the outcome before the contest, because the contest is rigged, and the rigging is the terms. And the terms are Tipton's, and Tipton's terms always produce the same outcome. Cobb came to the Burwell farm on Thursday evening. He came with his tools and his wagon and the $16, which was 3 months of farrier work, which was a significant amount of money for a man who shod horses for a living. But significant is relative, and the relativity was this. $16 against Clara's life was no comparison, because Clara was worth more than $60. Clara was worth 11 years of faithful work, and faithful work cannot be priced because pricing it would reduce it to commerce, and faithful work is not commerce. Faithful work is devotion, and devotion is priceless. He did not give the money to Maisie. He understood, the way he understood hooves and foundations, that giving the money would have been a transaction that required Maisie to accept charity, and accepting charity would have cost her something that the money could not replace, which was pride, and pride is the thing that keeps a woman farming 40 acres alone with a husband who cannot walk, and the keeping is the spine, and the spine must not be broken. Instead, he went to Tipton. He went to Tipton's office in Stillwell on Thursday evening, and he put $16 on Tipton's desk, and he said, "The Burwell debt is paid, the mare stays, the account is closed." Tipton looked at the money. Tipton looked at Cobb. Tipton made the calculation that men like Tipton make, the calculation of profit lost, of collateral unclaimed, of the $60 horse that would remain a $12 loan repaid at 16, and the calculation produced resentment, and the resentment produced words. The debt is the widow's, Tipton said. The widow pays, or the widow defaults. That is the arrangement. She is not a widow. Her husband is alive, and the arrangement is paid. The money is on your desk. The money is legal tender. The tender settles the debt. The debt is settled. You have no standing in this matter. I have $16 of standing. $16 is exactly the standing required. The standing is on your desk. Count it. Tipton counted it. Tipton counted it because the money was there and the money was correct, and the correctness was the end of the conversation. Because conversations with Tipton end when the money appears, the way fires end when the water appears. The element that feeds the thing is replaced by the element that kills it, and the element that kills Tipton's power is payment, and payment had appeared. Cobb walked out of Tipton's office into the evening. The evening in Stillwell was warm, and the dust in the street was golden in the last light, and the golden was beautiful in the way that Oklahoma evenings are beautiful. Casually, without effort, the beauty a byproduct of geography and light, and the particular quality of dust that hangs in the air like a curtain made of gold. And the curtain was between Cobb and the rest of the town. And behind the curtain the $16 was paid, and the payment was done, and the doneness was the satisfaction. And satisfaction earned by preventing a theft is the purest form of satisfaction, because it does not require anything in return. It requires only the knowledge that the thing that should not have happened did not happen, and the not happening was Cobb's work, and the work was good. He drove his wagon home. He drove slowly, because driving slowly is what a person does when the driving is not urgent, and when the evening is beautiful, and when the thing that needed doing has been done. And the doneness allows the slowness, and the slowness allows the thinking, and the thinking was about Maisie Burwell, who had been farming 40 acres alone for 2 years with a husband who could not walk, and a horse that was about to be stolen by a man who lent $12 and demanded $60 worth of animal. And the thinking produced a feeling, and the feeling was the one Cobb Sutherland had been avoiding for 2 years, because the feeling was inconvenient, and the inconvenience was this. The feeling was love, and love for a married woman is the most inconvenient love there is, and the inconvenience does not diminish the love. It only complicates the expression, and the expression was $16 paid to a moneylender on a Thursday evening, which is not a conventional expression of love, but which is, in the vocabulary of farriers and farmers, the most eloquent expression available. Cobb went back to the Burwell farm on Friday morning. He went not to deliver news of the payment. The payment was private, between him and Tipton, and the privacy was deliberate, because the privacy preserved Maisie's pride. He went to shoe Clara, because Clara's shoes were due, and due is due, and the shoeing was the reason, and the reason was sufficient. He shod Clara in the barn while Maisie watched. She watched because watching a farrier work is watching a person who cares about foundations, and caring about foundations is visible in the hands. The way the hands hold the hoof, the way the hands shape the shoe, the way the hands fit the shoe to the hoof, with the precision of a man who believes that the fit matters more than the speed, and the mattering more was the quality Maisie noticed, because quality is the thing that people who do hard work recognize in other people who do hard work. Tipton is not coming, Cobb said. He said it while he worked, while his hands were on Clara's hoof, while his back was bent, and his voice was directed at the ground, and the directing at the ground was the casual delivery of news that was not casual at all, the delivery designed to make the news seem small when the news was enormous. He said Friday. The debt is paid. Tipton will not come on Friday or any other day. The account is closed. Maisie was quiet. The quiet was the quiet of a person doing arithmetic. The arithmetic of how a debt gets paid when the debtor has no money. The arithmetic that produces the conclusion that someone else has paid, and the someone else is standing in the barn with a horseshoe in his hand. You paid it. Clara's shoes were due. I came to shoe Clara. The shoeing is $2. The rest is between me and Tipton, and the rest is settled. The rest is $16. The rest is a horse that has worked for 11 years, and that deserves to keep working, and a woman who has worked for 2 years alone, and who deserves to keep working. And the keeping is not charity. The keeping is justice. Because a $12 loan that becomes a $16 demand for a $60 horse is not lending. It is theft, dressed in paper, and I do not permit theft when I can prevent it, and I could prevent it, and I did. Maisie stood in the barn. She stood with Clara beside her. Clara, who did not know about the $12, or the $16, or the Friday deadline, or the paying of the debt. Clara, who knew only that the farrier was here, and the farrier's hands were good, and the shoes were new, and the newness was the foundation, and the foundation held. "I will repay you," Maisie said. "You will not repay me. You will let me shoe Clara twice a year, and you will let me check the stock when I pass through, and you will let me sit on the porch when the weather is warm and the coffee is made, and the sitting is the payment, and the payment is sufficient." The sitting began that morning. The coffee was made, the porch was warm. The farrier and the farmer sat in the June sun, while Clara stood in the pasture on her new shoes. And the shoes were the foundation, and the foundation held everything up. The horse, the farm, the woman. The man on the porch with the coffee in his hands and the quiet satisfaction of a person who has prevented a theft and who has asked for nothing in return except the thing that costs nothing and means everything, which is presence. And presence on a porch in June with coffee is as close to love as a farrier and a farmer can come on a Thursday morning. And the closeness was enough, and the enough was the beginning.